Gregor Mendel, often referred to as the father of genetics, conducted groundbreaking experiments in the mid-19th century that laid the foundation for our understanding of inheritance. Mendel was an Austrian monk with a strong background in mathematics and natural sciences, and his curiosity about how traits were passed from one generation to the next led him to experiment with pea plants in the garden of his monastery. Mendel chose pea plants for his experiments because they had several distinct characteristics that were easy to observe, such as flower color, seed shape, and pod appearance. Additionally, pea plants could be easily controlled for breeding, as they could either self-pollinate or be cross-pollinated by hand. Mendel meticulously crossbred pea plants with different traits and observed how these traits were inherited by successive generations. For example, he crossed plants with purple flowers with those with white flowers and noted the color of the flowers in the offspring. By carefully controlling which plants were bred together and analyzing the resulting traits over several generations, Mendel collected data that would become the basis of his conclusions. Through his experiments, Mendel reached three important conclusions about inheritance. First, he concluded that traits are determined by factors, now known as genes, that are passed from parents to offspring. Each individual inherits two factors for each trait, one from each parent. Second, Mendel discovered the principle of dominance, which states that when two different versions of a factor are present in an individual, one may mask the effect of the other. For example, when Mendel crossed a pea plant with purple flowers, a dominant trait, with one with white flowers, a recessive trait, all the offspring in the first generation had purple flowers, indicating that the purple factor was dominant over the white. Finally, Mendel's third major conclusion was the principle of segregation, which explains that during the formation of reproductive cells, gametes, the two factors for each trait separate so that each gamete carries only one factor. When fertilization occurs, the offspring receives one factor from each parent, restoring the pair. Mendel's work was meticulous and revolutionary, but it took a long time for the scientific community to understand and appreciate his findings. When Mendel published his research in 1866, the significance of his work was not recognized. This was partly because the scientific community at the time did not have a clear understanding of the mechanisms of inheritance, and Mendel's ideas about discrete factors, genes, were too abstract for many to grasp. Additionally, Mendel's work was published in an obscure journal, and the scientific community was largely focused on other theories of inheritance that were more qualitative and less mathematical. It was not until the early 20th century, over 3 decades after Mendel's death, that his work was rediscovered by scientists such as Hugo de Vries, Carl Correns, and Erich von Schumack, who independently reached similar conclusions and recognized the importance of Mendel's experiments. With advances in biology and a better understanding of cell division and genetics, Mendel's principles became the foundation of the modern field of genetics. Today, his work is recognized as a critical turning point in the study of heredity, and his experiments with pea plants are taught as a fundamental example of how traits are inherited through the transmission of genes,